The great chamber of the Galactic Council was filled with beings from across the stars. There were tall creatures with skin like blue glass. There were small, furry beings with 6 eyes. There were things that looked like floating clouds of light. 300 species sat in this room, and they all shared one opinion about the newcomers from the small blue planet called Earth. Humans were weak. Humans were primitive. Humans did not matter. Admiral Jack Morrison stood at the center of the chamber and tried not to let his frustration show. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent 30 years in the Navy, and he had faced pirates, terrorists, and hostile nations. But nothing had prepared him for this. The aliens were not hostile. They were something worse. They were dismissive. "Your request for trade partnership has been noted," said the council speaker, a creature that looked like a giant mantis made of gold. "However, Earth's technological level does not meet our minimum standards. Perhaps in another 1,000 years." Laughter rippled through the chamber. It was a strange sound, made up of clicks and hums and whistles from 100 different throats. But Morrison recognized it for what it was. They were laughing at humanity. He kept his face calm. "We understand. Thank you for your time." Behind him, Dr. Katie Vance clenched her fists. She was young, barely 30, with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. She had dedicated her life to studying alien life, and she had dreamed of this moment since childhood. Meeting other species, learning from them, building bridges between worlds. Instead, she felt like a child being told to go away while the adults talked. Commander Ryan Cole stood beside her, his hand resting near his sidearm out of habit. He was a compact man, with a shaved head and watchful eyes. He did not like this place. Too many exits to watch. Too many unknown variables. His instincts told him something was wrong. The human delegation left the chamber and boarded their ship, the Horizon's Edge. It was a diplomatic vessel, lightly armed, designed for peaceful missions. They were heading to Verath Prime, a neutral colony world, to establish a small embassy. It was humble work, but Morrison believed it was important. Every journey started with a single step. The trip took 3 days. Verath Prime was a beautiful world, with purple forests and silver oceans. The colony there was home to several species who lived together in peace. The humans were welcomed warmly by the local population, who seemed less arrogant than the council members. For 2 weeks, things went well. The embassy was established in a small building near the main city. 47 humans lived and worked there. Diplomats, scientists, support staff. Some had brought their families. There were children playing in the gardens, their laughter mixing with the songs of alien birds. Katie spent her days meeting with local scholars, learning about their history and culture. Ryan ran security drills and tried to relax. Morrison sent reports back to Earth, describing slow but steady progress. Then the Kathari came. They arrived without warning. A fleet of 50 warships dropped out of hyperspace and surrounded the planet. The Kathari were reptilian creatures, tall and covered in scales, the color of dried blood. They had conquered 60 worlds and enslaved dozens of species. They feared nothing and respected no one. High Commander Zorath led the attack personally. He was massive, even for his kind, with golden eyes that held no mercy. He broadcast a message to the entire planet. "This world now belongs to the Kathari Dominion. All who resist will die. All who submit will serve." The local defense forces tried to fight back. They were destroyed in minutes. The Kathari ground troops landed and began their conquest. They moved through the streets with brutal efficiency, killing anyone who raised a weapon against them. Morrison gathered his people in the embassy. He sent an emergency signal to Earth and to the Galactic Council. He begged for help. The Council responded first. Their message was short. "Verath Prime is outside our protected zone. We cannot intervene. We advise surrender." Morrison stared at the message for a long moment. Then he turned to his people. "We're not surrendering. Earth will send help. We just need to hold on." They held on for 6 hours. The Kathari broke through the embassy walls just before dawn. Morrison stood at the front, firing his weapon until it was empty. Ryan fought beside him, taking down enemy soldiers with precise shots. Katie helped the wounded, dragging them to safety even as the building burned around her. But there were too many enemies. The Kathari overwhelmed them through sheer numbers. Morrison was shot 3 times. He fell, and the world went dark around the edges. The last thing he saw was Zorath stepping over his body, barely glancing at him. "Weak," the High Commander said. As expected, Katie and Ryan were captured along with a handful of survivors. They were forced to watch as the Kathari executed the remaining humans one by one. Men, women, children. The aliens showed no emotion as they killed. It was not cruelty to them. It was simply efficiency. 47 humans had lived in that embassy. When the sun rose, only 12 remained alive. They were kept as witnesses, so they could tell others what happened. Zorath broadcast another message, this time to the entire galaxy. He stood among the bodies of the dead, his scales gleaming with blood. "Let this be a lesson to all primitive species. The Kathari do not negotiate. We do not show mercy." Humanity thought they could join the galactic community. He gestured at the corpses around him. "This is their place. At our feet." He laughed. It was a harsh, rattling sound, like stones grinding together. "If any species trades with Earth, helps Earth, or speaks in Earth's defense, they will share this fate. Humanity is alone, and they are nothing." The message spread across the galaxy. The Galactic Council watched and did nothing. They were afraid of the Kathari, and fear made them cowards. On Earth, the message arrived at midnight. President Laura Bennett watched it in the Situation Room, surrounded by her advisors. The room was silent except for Zorath's laughter echoing from the speakers. When the recording ended, no one spoke for a long time. Then Admiral Morrison's voice came through. Weak and filled with pain. He had survived his wounds. Barely. His message was only 11 words. "They killed our people. They're laughing about it. Don't forget." President Bennett stood. Her face was pale, but her eyes burned with cold fire. "Get me General Ortega," she said. "We have work to do." Across the planet, humanity learned what had happened. And something changed. Something old and primal woke up in the human heart. It was not fear. It was not despair. It was rage. The news spread across Earth like wildfire. Every screen, every device, every public display showed the same images. The burning embassy, the bodies in the streets, the laughing face of High Commander Zorath. People gathered in silence to watch. In New York, crowds filled Times Square. In Tokyo, millions stopped in the streets. In small towns and great cities, humanity watched together, and they felt something they had not felt in generations. Unity. President Laura Bennett addressed the United Nations the next morning. She was a small woman with silver hair and sharp eyes. She had been a diplomat her whole life, always believing that words could solve any problem. Now, she stood before the world and spoke different words. "Yesterday, 47 of our people were murdered. Not soldiers, not warriors, diplomats, scientists, families, children." Her voice was steady, but there was iron beneath it. "They were killed because we are human, because we are new to this galaxy, because the Kathari believe we are weak." She paused and looked directly into the cameras. "They are wrong." The chamber erupted in applause. But Bennett raised her hand for silence. "I will not lie to you. The Kathari are powerful. They have conquered 60 worlds. They have 10,000 warships. We have 200. She let that number sink in. "The Galactic Council has told us to accept this, to move on, to be grateful they did not kill more of us." Her expression hardened. "I reject that advice. I reject the idea that we should accept the murder of our children. I reject the notion that because we are small, we must be silent. I reject the cowardice of those who would let evil go unanswered, because fighting is hard." She took a breath. "Today, I am authorizing full military mobilization. Every shipyard will build warships. Every factory will make weapons. Every resource we have will go toward one goal. We will make the Kathari answer for what they have done." The world watched. And the world agreed. 3 days later, Ambassador Thelvok arrived on Earth. He was an Andari, a species known for their wisdom and long lives. His skin was pale, purple, and his eyes were large and sad. He had served the Galactic Council for 300 years, and he had seen many species rise and fall. He met with President Bennett and General Sam Ortega in a private room. Ortega was a big man with a weathered face and hands that had seen combat. He listened more than he talked, and when he did speak, people listened. "I come as a friend," Thelvok said. His voice was soft and musical. "I beg you to reconsider this path. The Kathari cannot be defeated. They are too strong, too numerous. If you attack them, they will destroy your world." Bennett nodded politely. "We appreciate your concern, Ambassador. You do not understand." Thelvok leaned forward. "I have watched the Kathari conquer 60 species. 60. Some were far more advanced than humanity. They had fleets of thousands. They had weapons you cannot imagine. And they all fell." General Ortega spoke for the first time. "Did any of them fight back?" Thelvok blinked. "What do you mean? When the Kathari attacked them, did they fight? Or did they surrender?" The ambassador was quiet for a moment. "They surrendered. It was the logical choice. Fighting would only have increased the death toll." Ortega smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "So the Kathari have never actually fought a war. They've just shown up with big fleets and scared everyone into giving up. That is one way to describe it. Then they've never fought a real enemy." Ortega stood and walked to the window. Outside, cargo ships were already moving toward the orbital shipyards. "Humans don't surrender, Ambassador. It's not in our nature. We've been fighting wars since we lived in caves. We fought each other for thousands of years before we learned to fight together. And now we have a common enemy." He turned back to face Thelvok. "The Kathari think they know war. They don't. They know conquest. They know bullying smaller species into submission. But war?" He shook his head. "War is what happens when you push someone so hard that they decide death is better than defeat. That's what they've done to us. And they have no idea what's coming." Thelvok looked at Bennett. "Can you not reason with him?" Bennett smiled sadly. "General Ortega is the most reasonable man I know, Ambassador. That's why I chose him to lead our military. If he says we fight, then we fight." The ambassador stood slowly. "Then I wish you well, though I fear for your future. I will tell the Council that humanity has chosen war." "Tell them something else," Ortega said. "Tell them to stay out of our way." After Thelvok left, the real work began. Admiral Morrison returned to Earth, still recovering from his wounds. He refused to rest, spending every day at military headquarters, planning the defense of human space. Katie Vance worked with scientists to study captured Kathari technology, looking for weaknesses. Ryan Cole began training a new Special Forces unit, soldiers who would strike behind enemy lines. The shipyards worked around the clock. 3 shifts a day, 7 days a week. Workers who had never touched a weapon volunteered to serve. Scientists developed new weapons. Engineers improved old designs. Everyone had a job, and everyone did it. 6 months passed. The Galactic Council watched with confusion. They expected humanity to negotiate. They expected begging, pleading, desperate attempts to find peace. Instead, Earth went quiet. Human ships stopped traveling to alien ports. Human diplomats stopped attending council sessions. It was as if the entire species had turned inward, focused on something the galaxy could not see. High Commander Zorath grew impatient. He had expected fear. He had expected surrender. Instead, there was only silence. "They are planning something," his advisors warned. Zorath dismissed their concerns. "What can they plan? They are primitives, with primitive ships and primitive weapons. If they will not come to us, we will go to them. We will finish what we started." He assembled a war fleet. 500 ships, the finest in the Dominion. He would crush Earth and scatter the ashes across space. He would show the galaxy that defiance was futile. The fleet departed for the Sol system with great ceremony. Soldiers sang battle hymns. Officers dreamed of glory. They had conquered 60 worlds, and Earth would be the 61st. But as they traveled through hyperspace, something waited for them in the darkness ahead. Something they did not expect. Something they could not imagine. Humanity was ready. The Kathari fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. 500 warships. Arranged in perfect formation, their hulls gleamed with the red and black colors of the Dominion. Each ship carried hundreds of soldiers eager for battle, though they expected no real fight. This was meant to be an execution, not a war. High Commander Zorath stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Endless Fury. He looked at the distant sun and the small blue planet that orbited it. So tiny, so fragile. He would enjoy watching it burn. "Begin the advance," he ordered. The fleet moved forward. And then the first ship exploded. There was no warning, no enemy vessel in sight. One moment the cruiser was there, the next it was a ball of fire and twisted metal. Then another ship exploded. And another. The darkness of space was suddenly full of light and death. "Mines!" someone screamed. "The entire sector is filled with mines," Zorath snarled. "Impossible. Our sensors detected nothing." "How?" Zorath. 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 But the sensors had been wrong. For 6 months, humanity had been seeding this region with weapons. Nuclear warheads. Antimatter charges, devices so small and well hidden that even advanced alien technology could not find them. Billions of kilometers of space had become a killing field. 40 Kathari ships died before they even saw an enemy. Zorath ordered his fleet to stop and regroup. He was angry now, truly angry. These primitives had surprised him. They would pay for that. "Find a clear path," he commanded, "and locate their fleet. I want to see them before I destroy them." His officers worked frantically. And then they found the human fleet. It emerged from behind the moon called Titan, using the gas giant Saturn as cover. 600 ships. Not 200. As the intelligence had claimed, 600 warships, built in secret, hidden from the galaxy. Humanity had worked day and night for half a year, and this was the result. At the front of the formation was the battleship Iron Resolve, the largest vessel Earth had ever built. Its commander was Captain Ben Harper. A quiet man with steady hands and ice in his veins. He had lost his brother at Verath Prime. He had volunteered for this mission personally. "All ships, this is Harper," he said into the fleet communication channel. "Remember what they did. Remember why we're here. Today we show the galaxy what happens when you hurt our people. Today we make them pay." The battle began. Kathari tactics were simple and direct. They formed lines and charged forward, using their numbers and firepower to overwhelm enemies. It had worked on 60 worlds. It would not work today. Human tactics were chaos given form. Small fighter squadrons darted forward, drawing Kathari ships out of formation. When the enemy cruisers broke ranks to pursue, they flew into ambush zones where human destroyers waited with weapons charged. Electronic warfare ships broadcast signals that blinded Kathari sensors, making their targeting systems useless. Human vessels moved constantly, never staying in one place, never following predictable patterns. The Kathari had never seen anything like it. Captain Harper drove the Iron Resolve straight into the heart of the enemy fleet. He should have been surrounded and destroyed. Instead, his ship became the center of a whirlpool, spinning and firing in every direction, while smaller human vessels struck at enemies who tried to close in. "Target their command ships," Harper ordered. "Take out their leaders, and the rest will panic." It was a gamble based on human knowledge of the Kathari. Their society was rigid and hierarchical. Soldiers followed orders without question. If those orders stopped coming, they would hesitate. And in battle, hesitation meant death. One by one, the Kathari command cruisers fell. And just as Harper predicted, the enemy fleet began to lose coordination. Ships bumped into each other. Firing solutions became confused. The rigid formation that had been their strength became their weakness. But the humans had another weapon. Something the Kathari had never faced. Boarding parties. Commander Ryan Cole led the first assault team. They launched from their ship in small boarding pods, crossing the gap between vessels in seconds. The pods punched through the hull of a Kathari battlecruiser, and human marines poured out. The fighting inside was brutal. The Kathari were larger and stronger than humans. But humans had trained for this. They wore powered armor that enhanced their strength. They carried weapons designed for close combat. And they had something the Kathari lacked: fury. Cole moved through the corridors of the enemy ship like a ghost of vengeance. He remembered the faces of the dead at Verath Prime. He remembered the children. Every Kathari soldier who faced him learned a terrible truth. Humans were not weak. Humans were not afraid. Humans were very, very angry. Within an hour, the boarding teams had captured 3 enemy warships from the inside. Other Kathari vessels saw their own ships turn against them, and fear began to spread through the fleet. Zorath watched his forces crumble and could not understand it. This was not possible. These were primitives, cave dwellers who had learned to build ships barely a century ago. How could they be winning? All ships, retreat, he finally ordered. Fall back to regroup. But it was too late for retreat. Human ships had circled around and blocked their escape routes. The hunter had become the hunted. The battle lasted 8 hours. When it ended, 312 Kathari ships had been destroyed. The surviving vessels, including Zorath's flagship, were surrounded and captured. 41 human ships had been lost, a heavy price, but far less than anyone had expected. Ryan Cole personally led the team that stormed the endless fury. They found Zorath on his bridge, standing among his dead officers, weapon in hand. For a moment, the High Commander considered fighting. Then he saw the cold eyes of the humans around him and lowered his weapon. "This is not possible," he said. "You cannot defeat us. We have conquered 60 worlds." Cole walked up to him, removed his helmet, and stared directly into those golden reptilian eyes. "You attacked civilians," he said quietly. "You killed children. You laughed about it. Did you think we would let that go? Did you think we would surrender like everyone else?" Zorath did not answer. "You made a mistake," Cole continued. "The worst mistake of your life. You gave humanity a reason to unite. A reason to fight. A reason to unleash everything we are capable of. And now you will learn what that means." He signaled his soldiers, "Take him. He has a lot to answer for." Back on the Iron Resolve, Captain Harper watched as the last Kathari ships surrendered. He felt no joy, only grim satisfaction. This was just the beginning. There were more enemies to face, more battles to fight. Admiral Morrison's voice came through the communication system. "Well done, Captain. But the war is not over. Set course for Kathari space. It's time to take the fight to them." Harper nodded and gave the order. The human fleet turned toward enemy territory. The galaxy would never be the same. The Galactic Council received news of the battle 12 hours later. At first, they did not believe it. The report must be wrong. The numbers must be mistaken. A primitive species with a handful of ships could not possibly have destroyed a Kathari warfleet. Then the recordings arrived. Footage from surviving ships showed the impossible in perfect detail. Human vessels dancing through explosions, boarding pods punching through armored hulls. The Endless Fury, flagship of the Dominion, captured by creatures the Kathari had dismissed as insects. Ambassador Thelvok watched the recordings 3 times. Each time, he noticed something new. The precision of human tactics, The ferocity of their soldiers. The absolute refusal to accept defeat. He had underestimated them. They all had. "What happens now?" asked a council member, his voice trembling. Thelvok shook his head slowly. "Now we watch. And we hope that when the humans are finished, they remember who helped them and who stood aside." In Kathari space, humanity's vengeance had begun. Admiral Morrison commanded the invasion fleet personally. His wounds had healed, but the scars remained. He did not try to hide them. Every scar was a reminder of why they were here. Every scar was a reason to keep going. "I want something understood," he told his captains before they entered enemy territory. "We are not the Kathari. We will not murder civilians. We will not massacre the innocent. Our targets are military installations, weapons factories, and warships. If it cannot fight back, we do not shoot it." Captain Harper asked the obvious question, "And what about the camps?" Morrison's jaw tightened. Intelligence reports had revealed something terrible. The Kathari did not simply conquer other species, they enslaved them. Across their empire, millions of beings lived in concentration camps, forced to work until they died. They had been forgotten by the galaxy. Abandoned by the Council. "We free them," Morrison said. "Every single one." The first target was the Kathari shipyard at Vorak Station. It was a massive structure that produced 50 warships every year. Morrison's fleet arrived without warning and opened fire before the defenders could organize. The station's shields held for 11 minutes. Then they collapsed, and human weapons tore through the hull. Secondary explosions erupted as fuel stores and munitions caught fire. The station broke apart, its pieces tumbling into the nearby gas giant. 70 ships under construction were destroyed with it. From there, the human fleet moved through Kathari space like a storm. They struck weapons, factories, and military bases. They disabled communication networks and supply lines. Each attack was precise and devastating. The Kathari had never faced an enemy who struck without warning and vanished before reinforcements arrived. Dr. Katie Vance traveled with the fleet, no longer just a scientist but an intelligence officer. She worked to identify the locations of prison camps, using captured data and interrogations of prisoners. It was dark work, learning the full scope of Kathari cruelty. But it was necessary. "There's a camp on the fourth moon of Kathari Prime," she told Morrison one evening. 40,000 prisoners, mostly Verath and Oran. Slave labor for mining operations. Morrison nodded. "Send Commander Cole." Ryan Cole had become something of a legend among human forces. His boarding teams had captured over 20 enemy vessels. His ground units had seized military installations that were supposed to be impenetrable. Where he went, the Kathari learned to fear. He led 300 Marines to the moon. They landed at night, using stealth shuttles that avoided detection. The camp was surrounded by guard towers and electric fences. Thousands of Kathari soldiers protected it. The assault lasted 40 minutes. Cole's forces struck the power generators first, plunging the camp into darkness. Then they hit the guard towers with precise fire. By the time the main Kathari force realized what was happening, human soldiers were already inside the perimeter. The fighting was fierce but one-sided. Kathari soldiers fought to the death, as they always did. But they were confused and disorganized, while the humans moved with practiced coordination. When dawn arrived, the camp was in human hands. Cole walked through the gates and looked at the prisoners. They were thin and scarred, their eyes hollow from years of abuse. Many could not stand. Some could barely lift their heads. A Verath elder approached him slowly. The Verath were delicate beings with silver skin and large eyes. They had been among the first species conquered by the Kathari, over a century ago. "Who are you?" the elder asked in broken common. "Why are you here?" Cole removed his helmet so the alien could see his face. "We're humans. From Earth. We came to set you free." The elder stared at him for a long moment. Then tears began to flow from those large eyes. "We thought no one would ever come," he whispered. "We thought the galaxy had forgotten us." "We didn't forget," Cole said. "And we're not leaving anyone behind." Over the next 3 months, human forces liberated 12 worlds. 2 million prisoners were freed from Kathari camps. Species that had given up hope suddenly found themselves with protectors they had never expected. Small beings with soft skin and strange eyes, who fought like demons and then treated the wounded with gentle hands. The Kathari military was being dismantled piece by piece. Their shipyards were rubble. Their weapons factories were ash. Their fleets had been hunted down and destroyed. What had once been the most feared empire in the galaxy was crumbling. Finally, the human fleet surrounded the Kathari homeworld. Admiral Morrison broadcast a message that reached every city, every village, every home on the planet below. People of Kathari, your military leaders attacked our civilians without provocation. They murdered innocents. They laughed as children died. We have come to answer for those crimes. He paused, letting the words sink in. We are not here to destroy your civilization. We are not here to enslave your people. We want only those responsible for the massacre at Verath Prime. Surrender them to us. Dismantle your war fleet. Accept responsibility for what was done in your name. Do this, and the war ends. He waited. You have 72 hours. On the planet below, panic spread through the military leadership. Some wanted to fight to the end. Others saw the fleet in orbit and knew that fighting was suicide. The civilian government, which had been powerless under military rule, saw an opportunity. Within 2 days, there was a revolution. The military dictatorship that had ruled Kathari for generations was overthrown by its own people. High Commander Zorath and 14 senior officers were handed over to human custody. The war was over, but the galaxy would remember. They would remember that a primitive species from a small blue planet had done what no one else could. They had faced the Kathari and won, not through cruelty, not through genocide, but through courage and justice and the refusal to accept evil. Humanity had arrived, and they were not to be underestimated. 1 year had passed since the massacre at Verath Prime. 1 year since the galaxy had watched High Commander Zorath laugh over human bodies. 1 year since humanity had been called primitive, weak, and worthless. Everything had changed. The great chamber of the Galactic Council was silent as Ambassador Thelvok rose to speak. The same 300 species sat in the same seats. But their attitude was different now. Where once there had been dismissal and mockery, now there was respect, and for some, fear. I stand before this council to propose a change in status for the human species, Thelvok said. His voice echoed through the chamber. When they first came to us, we classified them as primitive newcomers. We told them their technology was insufficient. We laughed at their small fleet and young civilization. He paused and looked around the room. We were fools. No one argued. No one laughed. In the space of 1 year, humanity has accomplished what no other species in Council history has managed. They defeated the Kathari Dominion. Not just defeated, dismantled. They destroyed their military infrastructure, captured their leadership, and ended their reign of terror. 60 species were conquered by the Kathari over 2 centuries. Humanity ended them in 12 months. He let that sink in. But that is not the most remarkable part. The Kathari expected brutality in return for their crimes. They expected genocide, extinction, the destruction of their civilization. That is what they would have done. That is what they did do. To species across the galaxy. He shook his head slowly. The humans did not follow that path. They targeted military installations only. They spared civilians. They freed over 2 million prisoners from Kathari labor camps. They showed mercy to a species that showed none. A murmur rippled through the chamber. This, more than anything, had confused the galaxy. Humanity had the power to destroy the Kathari completely. They had every justification, but they chose justice instead of vengeance. I therefore propose that humanity's status be upgraded from primitive newcomer to major power, Thelvok concluded. And I propose that they be granted a permanent seat on the High Council, with full voting rights. The vote was unanimous. President Laura Bennett appeared on screen to address the council. Behind her stood Admiral Morrison, his uniform decorated with new medals. Dr. Katie Vance was there too, now serving as Earth's ambassador to the liberated worlds, and Commander Ryan Cole, who had declined promotion 3 times because he preferred to stay in the field. "Thank you, Ambassador Thelvok," Bennett said. "And thank you to the Council for this recognition. But I want to be clear about something. We did not fight for status. We did not fight for power or territory or glory. We fought because our people were murdered. We fought because the galaxy told us to accept it. And we refused." Her voice was calm but carried weight. "We are not interested in building an empire. We have no desire to conquer other worlds or subjugate other species. We spent too many centuries fighting each other to have any appetite for that. But we will not be victims. We will not bow to those who think strength gives them the right to prey on the weak." She looked directly into the camera. "Earth will be a friend to those who seek friendship. We will trade fairly with those who deal honestly. We will help those who ask for help. And we will protect those who cannot protect themselves." Her expression hardened. "But let there be no misunderstanding. To anyone who harms human citizens, to anyone who targets innocent people, to anyone who believes that cruelty is strength, we have a simple message. What we did to the Kathari, we can do to you. Think carefully before you test us." The chamber was utterly silent. "Thank you for your time," Bennett said. "Earth looks forward to working with the Council." The transmission ended, and for a long moment, no one in the chamber spoke. After the Council session, Katie Vance traveled to the new embassy on Verath Prime. The building had been rebuilt on the same site where the massacre had occurred. A memorial stood in the garden, listing the names of all 47 humans who had died there. She walked through the garden and stopped at the memorial. She had known many of those names. Friends, colleagues, a young assistant named Tim, who had just graduated university, a family with 2 little girls who loved to chase the alien birds. "I'm sorry we couldn't save you," she whispered. "But we didn't forget. We'll never forget." Behind her, footsteps approached. It was Admiral Morrison. His hair was whiter now, and he walked with a slight limp from wounds that had never fully healed. But his eyes were still sharp, still watchful. "Beautiful memorial," he said quietly. Katie nodded. "They deserve it." They stood together in silence for a while. Around them, the colony was rebuilding. New buildings rose where old ones had burned. Species from across the galaxy had come to help. The liberated slaves, in particular, had chosen to settle here. They wanted to be near the people who had saved them. "What now?" Katie asked. Morrison considered the question. "Now we build. Now we prepare. The Kathari weren't the only dangerous species in this galaxy. Others are watching us, trying to decide if we're a threat or an opportunity. We need to be ready for either." "Do you think there will be more wars?" "Probably." He sighed. "That's just how the universe works. But maybe fewer than before. Maybe some species will think twice before attacking civilians. Maybe some will learn that strength isn't the same as cruelty." He smiled slightly. "That would be something, wouldn't it? If we actually made a difference." Katie thought about the Verath elder she had met in the camps. The tears in his eyes when he realized someone had come to save him. The gratitude of beings who had been forgotten by the galaxy. "I think we already have," she said. Back on Earth, Ryan Cole returned to his training facility. New recruits were waiting, young men and women who had watched the war and decided they wanted to serve. They looked at Cole with something like worship in their eyes. He told them the same thing he told every class. "Forget what you saw on the news. Forget the glory and the medals. War is ugly. War is painful. War leaves scars that never heal. We don't fight because we enjoy it. We fight because sometimes there's no other choice. We fight to protect people who can't protect themselves. And we fight with discipline, with honor, and with restraint. Because the moment we become like our enemies, we've already lost." The recruits listened, and they learned. Years later, when historians wrote about this period, they called it the turning point. The moment when humanity went from a footnote in galactic history to a major player on the cosmic stage. The moment when the galaxy learned to respect the small blue planet and its stubborn, fierce, compassionate people. The Kathari had called them primitive. The Council had called them emotional. But the liberated species, the ones humanity had saved, called them something else. They called them hope. And across the galaxy, in whispered conversations and official documents, another name began to spread. A name earned in fire and blood and mercy. Dangerous. Humans were dangerous. And that was exactly how they wanted it.